Everything is personal right here. Everything is personal right here.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of Everything is Personal. And today we have a special guest with us, Anika Pavel. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for having me.
Well, I wanted to talk to you. I had an interesting question. Maybe you were asked many times before, but how did you become a Bond girl?
Well, I was already working model and actress. I was on several TV shows and few little walk-ins on movies. And so with half of London, I think I have auditioned. And I was selected to be one of the girls who were in a James Bond movie. And it was great fun and a privilege and an honor. And I really feel that I'm part of such a large community, and it's wonderful.
It was the
Spy Who
Loved Me. Yeah, that's Roger Moore, right?
Roger Moore, yes.
So, did you have any interaction with Roger Moore?
Well, on the day of filming, we did, and I actually spoke to him much more when he came to New York for the 50th anniversary of James Bond, and I went to Barnes and Noble where he was signing books, and he was an absolute sweetheart. I couldn't believe he remembered me. I guess for the first time the accent was actually plus. He remembered me. I'm sure he wouldn't have recognized me, but he did remember my accent.
I mean, to me, he's an underrated Bond. You know, everybody's Sean Connery, which absolutely I agree, but I think Roger Moore was great. You had many transitions in your life, many like starts and stops and different iterations. Just wondering, do you have a process of how you actually make life decisions?
Well, some of the decisions has been put upon me. For example, when I was in England, I came as an au pair, and then Soviet Union invaded Czechoslovakia. So that I had no choice, but I had to deal with the situation such as it was. And also the woman I was working for went to prison. And so that again put another sort of a direction in my road, if you like. Yeah. So I had to deal with a number of situations. But I took it one by one. I have always been optimist and a dreamer. And I figured out how to do it. And when you are 18, and you are in a country of the Beatles, you think that everything's possible.
Yeah.
And it was.
I agree. So I want to talk to you about the immigrant experience. So just to preface, I'm an immigrant. I was born in Lithuania, and I immigrated to the United States with my parents and my mom's parents, my grandparents. I was 6, just turning 7. So I was a little kid. I really didn't have the same experience that you had. Maybe we can dive into a little bit of your history and your origin story and how you became an immigrant. So you just mentioned a bit. I just want to clarify. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Slovakia. It used to be. I actually grew up in Czechoslovakia. Okay. But since then, it split into Czech Republic and Slovak Republic. Mm. And I was born in a Slovak part of Czechoslovakia. I was born in a little town called Trnava, which we call Slovak Rome, because it has 11. It's a town of 30,000 people with 11 Catholic churches, 1 Lutheran churches, and 2 synagogues. So it really is, and I believe it now has a seat of archdiocese. I'm not personally Catholic, but and I grew up in the country when nobody particularly wore the religion on a sleeve. In fact, it was banned. If you wanted to get on with life, if you wanted to go to university, if you wanted to get promoted in your job, you did not go to church. So, and then I moved to a town called Piešťany, which is a spa for rheumatism. And then at 18, as I said, I was a dreamer, and I believed I can come to England, and I did it. And then Soviet Union invaded Czechoslovakia, and then the lady I was working for, she was a wonderful person, don't get me wrong, there was nothing terrible about it, but she did something that perhaps she shouldn't have done. And so I had to start, I came to London, and I by accident won model. They had a competition for international model in Daily Mail, and I was one of the 10 girls who were selected. And that's really how I became a model. And the journey went from there. Again, I first worked as a permanent model, then I put my photographic portfolio together and started to go on auditions, and worked in a restaurant as a waitress at night. And, it just went from, and my roles got bigger, and the photographs got into more important magazines. And like all the young girls, that's how I did it.
So I want to rewind back a little bit to like growing up. So were your parents together? Did you have siblings?
Yes, my parents, my parents were together until their death. I have two older brothers. Excuse me, I have to take a little drink.
Yeah.
I had two older brothers, and one stayed in Czechoslovakia, and my other brother, who was an English teacher, was pursued by the communists, and they tried to force him to teach communist propaganda. And he eventually, with his children, came to England. I was already in England, so I helped him out, and I helped him to get a job at a BBC World Service, which was broadcasting in Czechoslovakia. My mother was over the moon, and very thrilled. And eventually my brother came to America and worked for Voice of America. So yeah, we were very tightly knit family. We helped each other all the time. My parents came, in fact, my father died in England. He came to my wedding and he died of heart attack, which was very shocking, very difficult, but it makes you stronger. And so we were very loving family.
So when you were a kid, were you into art? Were you into science? What were you thinking you wanted to do with your life as a kid?
Oh no, I was tomboy. I was skating, playing hockey. I was a swimmer, but I was also a dreamer, and I wanted to write as far back as I remember. I was always making up stories. I would lie in bed and I would make up stories as far back as I can remember. And I wrote my first book when I was 15, and only longhand. It wasn't published. It was just, 15-year-old child, but I still have it. And when I was in high school, I got more deep into writing, and I did have some in a school magazine. 3 of my stories were published, and it was a really sad day when I realized, and I came to England and I realized I cannot write in Slovak because English was interfering. And so I became a writer again much later in life because my English wasn't good enough. And whilst we had the typewriters, there was no one to correct the spelling. And so I really had to, I had to read a lot in English so that, your vocabulary gets larger and you can start imagining in English. But when my children went to school, then I went to school. I went to NYU and I took a lot of courses online, and I started to go to writers' conferences and started to write, and then my work started to get published. So it wasn't until I was 60 that I really went back to my first love, writing.
Got it. So you grew up under communism, correct?
Right, correct.
So, I did as well, but I was a little kid. I don't have that kind of experience that you had firsthand. I only hear it from my parents and, my family members. You couldn't go here. You couldn't say, and you mentioned religion, you couldn't, nobody could practice their faith, whatever that may be. My family is Jewish, so we had a different type of persecution that is outside of just communism as well. It's just an added, I guess, bonus to that also. But how did growing up under communism shape your identity?
It's, I kind of lived my own life in my own dreams. I never really subscribed to the communist ideals, but I have never, although I grew up in communist country, but I never worked in communist country. I left after I graduated from high school. So when you are just in school, it's, obviously you would like to read books that you may not be able to read, but it wasn't like there wasn't wealth of books that we couldn't read. There was a lot of wonderful books that we were allowed to read, even Hemingway, and so it doesn't affect you as much. It obviously, when you are teenagers and you cannot listen to the music you want, and there was always someone who got hands on a magazine, and you suddenly realize, you look at yourself and wow, I want to know that. So it is like that, but to really the suppression, like my father, for example, suffered, and my brother, who was working, he was a teacher, and they were dictating what he can teach and how he can teach it, and and he would. He couldn't take lessons from the BBC. He wanted it for pronunciation, but they were trying to dictate him. So I did not have that. I was lucky enough not to have that. But of course, like you, I heard it from my brother, and both of my brothers. I write in my book, my younger brother who worked at a hotel, there was the Piešťany, the spa where we moved to, is very famous for rheumatism, and there was a lot of Americans and British and French and Germans who came. And my brother spoke English, French, and German, and he worked in a receptionist. And so they asked him to follow the foreign visitors, and he refused. So then he was prosecuted. Yeah. And so those are the things I did not have to go through. I was lucky not to go through. But I've heard it, and those are stories, both of these stories, for example, are in my book, because I think it is important for people to remember what it was like.
Why England? Like, did you consider other places, or did you have, and for me, once again, I'm reiterating that I had firsthand experience, but as a kid, I know it was a big struggle to get out of, the communist Soviet Union and to immigrate. Eventually, we ended up in the United States. So was there a certain process, and were you only able to go to England, or did you always wanted to go there because it's the home of the Beatles?
Well, for me, actually, first of all, I had there was just no way I could go to America. It was kind of too far. And I was really originally coming for 1 year just to learn to speak English. And of course, there was Beatles, and there was Liverpool Football Club. My brothers were fanatics, so Liverpool, here we go. And and then there was Jane Eyre. So there were a lot of magnets for me to go to England. But more importantly, it was where the opportunity opened up. How I came, where I got the job as an au pair. I don't think America even had that possibility. I don't think I would have even got a visa from America either. I think England was more willing to give a young person visa. So what England did, they would give a visa as long as I got an exit visa. This is, you and your parents probably very well know this. And because when I tell people I had to get an exit visa, they look at me like I have three heads. What exit visa? What is that? Well, at the time, the borders were closed. You didn't travel, you couldn't go anywhere. And if you wanted to even go into another communist country, like going to Budapest, even that was a big deal. Going to Poland was a big deal. But to go to West, that was kind of impossible. So I had a bit of a serendipity because it was just before the Dubček came to the government, and he started to loosen up he believed in socialism, but with a human face. He wanted free speech. He wanted people have a freedom to travel. And so I came in that short space of time, and I got a visa first for 3 months. So the British gave me visa for 3 months. So by the time the 3 months was up, Dubček already took over, and then suddenly there was freedom. And I was able to get a visa for additional visa for 2 years. And then, of course, this was in February, and then, of course, in August, Soviet Union decided, okay, enough of this freedom. Bang, here we go. And so, that's what eventually made the decision for me.
You talked about becoming a model. Did you actually have in the back of your head, like, I have a certain look that would be interesting. Maybe I can try this as getting additional income. People reinforce that in you, and also, did your name, your actual name, did it affect you getting into modeling because people had oh, it's somebody who's not British or foreign or anything like that. Did that impact your trajectory in modeling as well?
No, not really. I was working in a lawyer's office, and somebody in the office said, Daily Mail is looking for international models. They wanted specifically international models because there was a show at Christmas time at Olympia, and they wanted to make it very inclusive. And so I was one of the 10 girls who were selected, but I had no desire or idea about being a model. I used to model for my father because he was a tailor, but that was, stand still. I need to pin this on you, And so that kind of came about. I sent my photographs, didn't really think about it. Then I was invited to come, and there were 60 girls, and out of the 60, 10 was selected. And so I did a show, and suddenly I realized I was making 4 times as much as what I was working in. And also, even when I was working in a solicitor's office, I knew that was not my ultimate job. I was waiting to learn speak well enough English that I was still hoping that I would be able to go to Czechoslovakia and be a journalist. But as time went by, it became more and more clear that the longer I stayed in England, the more suspicious I would be if I came back.
Yeah. That's exactly it. Like that. I was going to actually ask you, because once you leave, it's really difficult to come back. I mean, now you can, but back then you can't, because now you'd be perceived as an international spy or something like that. Now you have information, you'd be interrogated and all that stuff. So yeah, so
Well, I was still legal. I mean, if you go legally out and you come legally back, and you come, if I would have come after 3 months,
yeah.
I probably would have been okay. But then, even if well, what happened was, in fact, before my time was up, they closed the border and ordered everybody, whether you have a valid visa or not, you have to come back by a certain date. By this time, I also, first I did worry, and my family did worry about me because I was in England too long, and would I be suspicious? Even I was legal, but who did you talk to, etc. So it was a little bit worrisome. And so also for me, I thought, I don't think I could live that life anymore.
Yeah, you got a taste of
Freedom.
England and freedom.
But
Exactly, it's freedom, and it's different. So going back to what actually inspired you to write Encounter with the Future? I believe that's the name of the book.
that's the title.
So what inspired you to write that in the first place?
Well, I didn't sit down, and it wasn't an inspiration or decision that I went to write a book. It started off that I started to write essays from my life, and they became quite successful. As I said, they were published. I was nominated for Pushcart Prize. So I thought this is kind of good, but I wrote, meanwhile, a fiction. And then my children started to say to me, why don't you, we would like you to write about the family. So I started to fill in the gaps. And so they said, write a book and fill in the gaps. Because the essays I wrote were sort of loosely related. And so my book is kind of a book that it's a collection of essays, but they all relate to each other, but they are organized because I wrote deliberately the stories that I wanted to connect them. It was about the family and about the history of the country and about members of the family who came to America and people. And I had one uncle who became incredibly successful and one that worked in Pennsylvania mines and just never came back and died of tuberculosis. So, and then I had uncle who worked in a resistance during a war. And so I wanted to have a picture of the family and the background for my children. And more and more people read it, and they said, I think this is interesting, not just for your family. This would be interesting to a lot of people who would like to learn about Europe and about that era and about your story too.
I know that you have a collection of essays and you clearly like put the pieces together, but is there a story, like an example of a story that you can give that gives the audience a sort of a taste, something that stands out of what they can expect when reading it?
There's a number of stories that are dear to my heart. I write about my brother when he was working for the BBC. He was actually hit by a car. The night shift. That time, the underground did not work after 12 o'clock. And so he used to ride his bicycle home. And he was hit by KGB car and left for dead. But he didn't die and he recovered. And
Why were they targeting him? Because he was working
because the
BBC?
BBC broadcasted to Slovakia and told people the truth. Like I remember people telling me they would be, and he was playing soccer. So he was a very popular teacher. So a lot of people knew him, and people in the town would gather to listen to his broadcast at the BBC. And so this was not comfortable. And so when he survived, I told him, don't go back. And he said, that's exactly what they want. He went back.
Went back. And what happened? Was he able to
He
live in
was,
peace?
he worked for a while longer. And then when I got married and I came to America, then he came to visit me. And then, believe it or not, Voice of America has offered him a job. They kind of took him away from BBC. They offered him a job in America. And so he worked for Voice of America.
He stayed.
And stayed and lived in America. And in fact, he then worked for State Department as a teacher, because at some point there was Voice of America ceased to exist. So he worked as a teacher at the State Department. Every diplomat who went to Slovakia, he taught Slovak, because they need to know a little bit. I mean, it's not like they're going to write a book, but can get by.
So I think you're a good person to answer this question, because I have conversations with young people all the time nowadays, and they're not really interested in history. History is something that is like, oh, I get my facts from TikTok or some other thing. It's not the same as like I have a deep interest in history, and history repeats itself. And so, we have a lot of these things that happened in history: Holocaust, communist occupation, like all these different things that happened. But it seems, especially now in 2024, almost 25, that there is a repeat of things that happened before. How do you convey history in an interesting way for young people or for people in general to connect to, so they kind of learn not to make the same mistakes, or try to avoid making the same mistakes again that were made in history prior to that?
Well, to start with, actually, when I did not do this consciously, but what actually happened, it's a collection of short stories. And we all know that young people have the attention of an ant. So it's not overwhelming. It's not like a big, huge history of books that, I can't dwell into it. But each story tells something. There's a story from Second World War, story from the communism, and story of coming to different countries, because I also lived in Hong Kong. And then, how different it was to come to America, because by the time I came to America, I was already 36 years old. And by that time, you're kind of a little bit more formed at 18. I mean, at 18, when I came to England, I was like a sponge, like, you couldn't suck more of it, fast enough. So I suppose my book can show them that it is dangerous to be complacent. I mean, look, we have a Ukraine, and it was 1968 when Soviet Union just crashed Prague Spring, and all we did, it wasn't like Czechoslovakia was going, we hate Russians or anything like that. Not at all. Our sin, and wasn't even like we were over trying to do business or anything with Western countries. All we did, we had a freedom of speech, and we had a freedom to travel, so that we could learn from the other people and maybe bring it back. Will some people maybe stay? Possibly. But those who came back, this was Dubček's idea, those who came back would teach us more and will help us grow. But no, that was not up to Soviet Union. And this is happening, that's what Ukraine is about. What Russia wants to do is to gain back all the republics. And then, it's, if Ukraine falls, I assure you, it won't be long, because all the other republics will come.
Yeah, I'm sure that Belarus and all these.
Well, Belarus is already Russia.
Yeah.
Because the guy is like, that's already is just technically Belarus. So he can leave that to the last, because they just will go in willingly.
I just don't understand why, the Western countries, and I'll just say younger people, they're not seeing the the writing on the wall because it's so clear that, there was a war and, Russia's trying to gain back their territories where they have strongholds, not just military, but natural resources. They can strengthen themselves so they don't have to rely, on outside sources. And we're not seeing this as an actual threat to global stability. We're running around protesting different things, but the things that really are going on, we're blind to. In the world, back in the day, the world was huge. We didn't have the internet, so we didn't know what was going on. But right now, you can get that information in a fraction of a second. It's there available to you. But I think, in my opinion, I'm kind of answering my own question in a way, but I think people tend to not believe what they see because they think they're being manipulated. And news, like you were mentioning BBC,
They are being manipulated.
they are being manipulated, of course, but news used to be news. Like they report the news. This is what's happening. Then you have an editorial. Somebody gives an opinion. But now the lines between news, fact, and editorial opinion has been sort of blurred. So people don't know who to trust and what to say. So I don't even know if there's a way. I mean, yes, absolutely. Content that you provide, essays and all these different historical facts, that's one way to sort of go back and say, let's not do this again because there's real history behind this. But I don't know how to get people to sort of get a wake-up call and say, there's things going on in the world that we should be really aware of and we should be concerned about. I don't know if you have any thoughts or opinions on that.
Well, I think it's a twofold. One is there's a tremendous amount of disinformation. And secondly, it's a lack of interest. If it's not in your backyard, I don't care what's happening. That's the problem. And as you very well know, isolation is nothing new.
Yeah.
And so, unfortunately, if it's not close enough, people just don't care. People care what's around the corner.
It's unfortunate because the world is so small these days. It's not as big as it used to be. You have the butterfly effect that's in full force right now. What's going on there is going to eventually affect us here and vice versa. So I definitely think that people need to kind of read up on this a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely. I mean, look what's happening in Hong Kong. I lived in Hong Kong when it was still British territory.
Right.
And it was the most vibrant, most wonderful city. I loved Hong Kong. One of my sons was born in Hong Kong. And it was some of the happiest time of my life. And I met incredible people there, very interesting. And it's all over the world. It was like a hub of the universe. And you could meet anybody. And now, all gone.
Yeah.
Sadly, and China just came in and nobody lifted a finger.
Yeah, it's shut down. Same thing that, Russia came in Crimea and said, this is ours and we've taken it over and that's it. Nobody does anything. So you embolden these leaders to, do what they're doing because nobody's doing anything about that. I wanted to ask you about the quality that you may possess. So there's a lot of, I'll get into some more career stuff that you did, but it seems to me, based on my research and knowing a little bit about you, that you had a lot of transitions, as I mentioned in the beginning. You tried this, you tried that, and it sort of naturally progressed from things. But some things maybe didn't work out the way you wanted them. Maybe there were some setbacks. I was wondering if there is something that you can say that all these different things. If there's a main quality that you feel that you possess that helped you overcome a lot of those things that happen in your life that, as you said, you're a positive person, that help you overcome and still, continue moving forward?
I think that most important quality, if you want to succeed in anything, is just to be determined, not to get put off. And you have to be, show resilience. And if you have a problem, look at it, how am I going to deal with it, and deal with it. Don't put it away. And have a little bit of a humor, put a little bit of a smile, and just work hard and just be determined. It's like there's not that many people who writes in in a different language. It's hard. It's very hard for me. And I've been trying to promote my book now, and I've been doing a lot of podcasts. And it's funny, I'm mostly like with you because we spoke earlier and I knew that you were a foreigner. And so, so I kind of felt a little bit like being with my kindred spirit, who would know if I choke, will forgive me. And but it's sometimes very nerve-wracking, because you and I am, my children are incredibly articulate, and they would say to me, "Mom, say what you mean."
Yeah.
And but you have to say, "Okay, I will." So sit down, write down. I said, "This is what I meant," and never get discouraged, because that doesn't work. You have to keep on. You have to be resilient, and you have to work hard. And, if you trip, dust yourself off. I mean, I did some acting. I did, Benny Hill show and stuff. But very, very early on, I realized, I wasn't going to bring an Oscar home. I wasn't that kind of a actress. I was pretty good and successful model, and I did appear in a lot of magazines, and I would say I was a successful model, but I wouldn't say I was a successful actress. And I dabbed in it because they allowed me to. But writing was always what I had passion for. And thank God for the computers and a spell check, more importantly. So, because it was too much like, how do you spell that? Get a dictionary. But,
Yeah, that's funny. Now you can get like Chat GPT to do it for you, just prompt it correctly, and it'll write everything for you that you just have to go in and edit. I
I
love.
don't like to do that. I like, it has to, I feel that when I write it, it has my smell, it has my thought,
Absolutely.
but my personality. And the spell check's okay. Spell check can take
But
care of
but
it.
but you're absolutely right, because when you use different technology, it takes away your voice. I mean, it happens to me all the time because it writes it. I take the information. I'm like, it doesn't sound like me. It's correct. It's saying the right facts, but it's not saying it with my voice. And you absolutely nailed it. It's exactly what I feel. And I don't think that it can ever do that. I mean, you can prompt it to start learning your voice, but you're a human being. That something could have affected you today that changes your voice or how you want to communicate. And a machine
Exactly.
is never going to learn that.
Exactly. And there are nuances. The only fear I have with the technology that we will know the difference. But as time goes by, people will lose the sensitivity of the difference. And that would be too bad, because it would be too monolithic. It's just boring.
Yeah,
Let's say that's a little boring.
I agree with you. And I love the whole resilience thing because, you know, partially the immigrant experience builds resilience in you already, because it takes a lot of balls to leave your family, your country, travel, not know the language, not have money, not, all these different things. And I think people take that for granted a lot. That's why the immigrant experience in a lot of different countries, when the immigrant experience is done correctly, meaning they come legally, they integrate themselves, bring their piece of culture into that country to make
Right.
that country better, to lift everybody up.
That's
You
what
know,
makes us richer.
yeah, absolutely. But
By the way, can you still see me?
yeah, I see
Because
it.
the sun's coming down, and I just wondered if you can still see me.
Yeah, I see you. You mentioned something. I was going to ask you if it's true, but growing up, I was I had like a little TV I bought for myself, like a black and white TV in my room, and I loved different shows. The Three Stooges I used to watch all the time. but my show that I used to watch with my grandmother was Benny Hill. And I
Did you see one?
love Benny Hill. So were you one of the Benny Hill girls in
I
the show?
wasn't one of Benny Hill girls, but I was, if you look for Raid on a Waterloo station, um,
On Waterloo Station. I'm gonna watch that one.
so I played Midnight. It's a very funny thing, and he was the most wonderful person. I really like, and he was so funny and very kind.
Yeah. Just incredible. It's so nice to hear because I was such a huge fan, still am, and I loved the little old guy that he had, where he used to hit him with the hat, which is
I
my
know.
favorite thing, and then hit him on top of the head. It was
Yeah,
my
they're all
favorite.
great actors, and he was a really, I really loved Benny Hill. I was really sad when he passed away.
Um, do you have a community or mentors in your life that you can sort of go to when you have some questions or you have some things going on in your life?
Um, I have a very close friends. I have a number of very, very close friends, and I'm very, as long as I can, I go to this. I'm very close with my daughter and with my sons, and actually my daughters-in-law. But if there is something that I don't wish to discuss with them, I have also very good friends. I have a friend in England, Caroline, who is absolutely wonderful. We've been friends forever, and I can call her up any time of the night or day, but it might be my day, her night.
Right.
And we would talk for hours, and she's very patient. And I have a wonderful friend who is actually German, and she lives in America. And but we met. She casted me. She worked as she was part of the commercial company, a TV company that made commercials, and so I did a commercial for Close Up. It was at the time was the first no white, no blue, no pink, but red, bright red to space. And so, I was 22, and we are still close friends. And so, and she lives in New Jersey, and we see each other. I speak to her maybe 3 times a week at least, and we see each other 2, 3 times a year.
It's wonderful to have. What is there a certain takeaway or something that you hope the readers actually take away from reading your book?
I hope what people will learn is learn from history. Don't forget history, and that they will also learn about resilience, not necessarily just mine, but I write about my uncle during the Second World War, and number of people in my family, what they went through the Second World War. And my uncle who came to America. So it's a resilience of people that had to sometimes survive in a situation that was brought not on by themselves. But I also hope that people will laugh a little bit, because I also write a little humor story about what we did. This, I think, is a story you should hear. It was published in a Philadelphia journal. And it's a story during the COVID when nobody could get toilet paper. So I went home and I said to my husband, you know what we did in Czechoslovakia? We used to use newspapers.
Yeah.
He looked at me horrified, and I told him a story, how my husband hated Brezhnev and all of the Soviets and the politicians. He absolutely hated them. So we would cut up the paper and we would, squeeze them so that they are softer. And then we took them to the toilet paper. And my father always saved the Brezhnev and Kosygin and the Novotny, all these communists. And he used to say, those are mine.
Yeah. Wipe your butt with Brezhnev's face. Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. That's precisely what he did.
I
So I
love
hope
it.
that this kind of a stories from home will also bring a little bit of a smile on people's face.
I love that. I wanted to ask you because you are, you're so graceful and you look great, and as you're aging, being a model, being in the public eye, uh, and then aging. I see this all the time. I live in Los Angeles, so I see the whole Hollywood kind of thing. And I'm from Philadelphia, so I moved to Los Angeles about 16 years ago or so, and I've been watching, people who are in the public eye, men, women, especially women, models or actors who have a certain look, and then they start aging, and they start, it becomes an obsession for them to be able to, how do I do this gracefully? And in my opinion, a lot of them do not do it gracefully. So,
Yeah.
do you have a certain regimen? Are you plant medicine, supplements, food, exercise, anything else that you think that helps you sort of age gracefully in that way, being that public eye person?
I'm very lucky. The biggest luck I had was that I inherited my mother's skin. She's never used anything other than soap and water. And people are horrified when they find out that that's all I do. And I use no creams, nothing fancy, like whichever cream is on sale, and I grab it and I just look if there's too many ingredients, then I put it back.
Yeah.
But I'm very fussy about how many ingredients are in a thing. But I use just a very simple thing like oil of whatever there is, Avene or something like that. Just simple. And I don't take any pills. The doctors cannot believe I'm not on anything. And but I always exercise. Remember, I said I was a swimmer and I was a skater. I taught all my children to skate and all my grandchildren. And I also exercise. And so that's what kept my body sort of workable.
Well, what
Because
about food? What about like eating, like putting good things in your body? Because you talked about ingredients. Do you also care about what you put into your body as far as nutrients?
Well, again, coming from Czechoslovakia, we did not have complicated food. And so I don't have a taste for complicated food. And so I eat very little meat. We never had beef, so I don't like beef. It's not that I'm vegetarian, I just don't like it. So I don't eat beef because I don't like it. I don't eat chicken, and I eat pork, and I eat fish, and I eat a huge amount of vegetables. I have never met a vegetable I didn't like. And so, it didn't have to be from home. It was in Hong Kong, I ate every vegetable. Put any vegetable in front of me. Just make it simple. I don't like that there's too much on it. It has to be like sauteed or whatever. And that's basically what I stick to.
Yeah.
And of course, I drink beer because
Yeah.
I'm from Slovakia.
Of course.
But not in excess.
Yeah. No, beer's the best. I love
Beer is
my favorite is Belgian beer, but I do like Czech beer as
Pilsner
well.
work well. I have to
Oh,
good.
Nice Pilsner.
As an model, I have to plug a little Pilsner work well. Very
Exactly.
good beer. So
All right. I wanted to ask you some music related questions. Let's see how this goes.
are you sure you can see me?
It's getting a little bit dark now, but
I'm going to switch on a light.
okay.
It gets so dark these days, so
Yeah, I
quickly,
know,
because
I
it's
know.
6 o'clock here almost, so it gets dark.
Yeah, for sure. So do you remember, and if so, what was the very first concert that you attended?
Oh, yes, the Bee Gees at the Royal Albert Hall. And that was before, when there were still Bee Gees, there was 5 of them. And oh my goodness, yes, I do remember that. And I remember very, very vividly the concert of Rolling Stones, the free concert in Hyde Park when
Park.
just before George died. So yes. So
Before I forgot to ask this question because you said something. I wasn't really prepared for this, but let me rewind back and ask you this question about, you mentioned your father passed away when he had a heart attack when he came to your wedding, was it? I mean, how does that affect you? And how do you overcome that? I mean, it's such a sudden kind of thing that
Well, yeah, it was a shock. So what happened was it was still communist Czechoslovakia. And so when I got married in London, I married an American. They did not give a visa, exit visa, only to my father, not my mother, not my brothers. So I was like, all young girls, I was going to have a nice big wedding. But after that, we eloped. I was like, I don't want to have a wedding. And my husband was from America. Only a very small pinch of people would have come anyway. But not being able to, like, have my family, no, at least my mother and father, but only my father could come. So we eloped, and I was actually in the middle of making a movie. So we went to Monte Carlo just for a 3-day honeymoon and came back. And then 2 days later, my father came and he stayed and for most of the time. And he was going to leave on Monday, and on Friday night, we had a beautiful dinner, and it was, he hugged me, and in the morning, he was an early riser. I said to my husband, where's Dad? And I went to his bedroom, and he was on the floor, and I touched his cheek, and he was cold. So it was shocking. It was very hard.
sure. Yeah, sorry about that. I just wanted
Yeah.
to know the impact because it's such a sudden thing. But on the flip side, a lot of people suffer, and this was not that kind of experience. So I guess
It was shock, but I tell you what helped me finally get over.
mm,
My father used to like to have, when he had a drink, he drank Slivovitza, not beer,
yeah,
not in excess ever. But on any occasion when he drank, he said, he had one saying, and he said, "May I be healthy till the day I die." And that wish came true, because the night before we had the most wonderful dinner. We had the most wonderful time. He spent his entire vacation practically with the 3 weeks with me. And he was healthy till the day he died. And when the coroner came, he said he had such massive heart attack that before he hit the floor, he was already dead, because they can tell from the way the bruises react. And it actually helped me, because that's pointed out to me. That's exactly what he wanted.
yeah, no suffering. That's
No
wonderful.
suffering.
All right, I'm back to the music stuff. Sorry, I brought that up. I forgot. So, do you remember what was the last concert that you attended?
Well, last concert I attended was in Hong Kong, and it was Johnny Mathis, and it was brilliant. He just he was superb.
All right, so continuing the music theme. For the next year, you could only listen to 5 albums, and you don't have to remember the name of the album. Could be a Johnny Mathis album or whatever it is. What would be those 5 albums or artists that you would listen to for the next year?
What I listen to most of the time is Charles Aznavour, whom I knew, and I love his music. I listen to Edith Piaf, the Beatles, the Bee Gees. I listen to um, this one, it's escaping me. Oh, it's a Broadway show. Alexander Hamilton.
Oh, okay. You listen to Hamilton soundtrack. Yeah.
I listen to that a lot because it gives me hope
Mm,
that we are going to be okay.
love that. Okay, so a final question that I ask all my guests. Please describe what your room looked like growing up.
Oh, what my room, first of all, I did not have a room. I don't need to tell you that. There was one common room where we all ate, and my father was sewing there. My grandmother lived there. She was bedridden, so she was there. That's where we did our homework. That's where we had our stove, the coal stove. And then we all had one bedroom, and there was five of us: my mother, my father, and the three children. But we only had four beds. So my brothers had each bed, my parents, and I was a traveler. But by the time I was 6, my brothers kicked me out because apparently I kicked at night. So they wouldn't let me go to their bed. So after that, I slept with my parents. And I used to sleep until this day. It's interesting. Sometimes I do that with my husband. He said, "What are you doing at the bottom of the bed?" Because for some reason, I somehow twisted and I slept across the two beds at the bottom of their feet. So that's, somehow it's die hard.
That's hilarious.
That's what we had. We had two bed, living room and bedroom.
Got it.
I didn't get my own bed until I was 15 years old. Then I finally got my own bed.
Got it. Anika, where can people find out more about you? They can get your book, your other writings? Where can they engage with your content?
Well, I have a website, which is www.anikapavel.com. And I also post my podcasts in there, and they can learn about Slovakia, and also about my acting, my modeling, and my writing. And I'm also on Instagram, Anika.Pavel, and I'm also on Facebook. And that's about all the internet I can manage. I still like to have a free time, because otherwise it takes over your life.
That is true. And for my audience, I want to thank all of you for listening and staying with us. And, thank you for all the wonderful reviews that we've been getting. The listenership has really increased. I'm so grateful people for buying my book, and it's been incredible. And the more reviews I get, the more wonderful guests like Anika I can get on the show and to have them share their stories. So I really appreciate it. And Anika, I really want to thank you. It's been a pleasure having you on and telling these stories. So thank you so much for being on the show.
It was a pleasure for me too. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Hey everyone, thank you for watching and listening. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button, share this episode, and hit that bell. Like, comment. I so appreciate that. And check me out on social under Len May or Len May DNA. Find out more on LinkedIn or lenmaycoaching.com. And remember, everything is personal.